we're going to hoop my stabilizer. Tighten a little screw. Okay. And then I iron the shirt good and flat, and then I generally turn it this way, and I'll iron that part to make a crease, and then I iron it this way to make a crease, and then I stick pins where I want the center of my design to be. I generally don't hoop the shirt, just the stabilizer, and then I line my pins up with the notches that are in the hoop so that my design will be on straight. Kind of make sure that your horizontal crease is also straight. And then I just go around the edge and pin my shirt to the stabilizer, making sure it's still nice and even. You want to try and get as close to the hoop as you can. Smooth it out nice and flat. Oops, one more. Now I use a no-show fusible stabilizer on my shirts, so it will stick to the shirt. If you have one of these nifty little irons, you can kind of press it down a little bit so it'll... I'm not going to take those pins out yet because that's where I'm going to line my needle up with. Just kind of flip that. Alright, I'm going to move my embroidery design that I want to do today to my jump drive. I'm going to go to the file that it's in, and I'm looking for the 5x7 design, which is right here, and I'm putting it into my jump drive. I have a folder called Embroidery on that drive. So I take the design and I just move it over there. Okay, and you do want to make sure, I have a brother machine, so I use PES files. That's specific to brother, and you want to make sure that you're selecting the PES file if you have a brother machine that you're moving. This designer, when she makes a design, she includes one for every machine that you can get. So normally I go through here and I would delete all the ones that are not brother files, but I haven't done that with this one yet. Also, I did want to show this. This Planet Applique always includes a stitch chart in her files, and it will break down all the information. It'll tell you how many stops, how many color changes, and what your file's going to look like. Your design's going to look like when it finishes. And I usually print this out and keep it next to my machine when I'm doing a file. So, okay, now we're going to move to the machine. Stop. Okay. I'm going to put my jump drive in there. Okay, and then we go to that. Mine is in the embroidery file, so click that. There's my file. And then I hit the little pocket, and this is my design, and it shows me there that I'm on step 1 of 9, and to start with red. Normally the first stitch is going to be red in an applique. Alright, so now I'd marked my pins where I wanted my center to be, so I'm going to move the needle a little bit. And you click adjust and then layout, and the arrows allow you to move where your start point's going to be. Now it won't let me go any further up than that, so I'm going to have to adjust my center a little bit. Okay, now we're going to check and see where it's going to move, because I don't want my design running off the shirt. Okay, and that put the top of my design a little higher than I wanted it to be, so I'm going to go back to the arrows, and I'm going to bring it back down a little bit. And I'm going to check the layout one more time. Okay, now make sure you take your pins out because you don't want to stitch over them. Okay, so now that I know where I want it, I kind of stretch the shirt out a little bit. A lot of people pin around the edges. I tried to right there, but it just didn't work out too well. I just make sure that I've got my hands in here and I'm watching it while it's stitching down. So we have red thread. That's going to be our outline stitch. It's already threaded. It's in, so alright, that's the first. Now I have already prepared my fabrics that I'm going to use for my applique. I have my chart. I use Heat and Bond Light on the back or Steam-A-Seam Light. I like the Steam-A-Seam better, but I was out of it. So I've already ironed that to the back of my fabrics, and I'm going to use this gingham fabric first. Kind of peel off the backing, and then you take your fabric, you lay it in. Now, if you have one of these, you can do this, but I generally don't because if it goes over your stitch line, it's kind of hard to cut your applique out. So now it's telling me to change my thread color. And all Planet applique files, the tack down color is usually black. So we have that already. Now we're just going to do the tack down stitch. Okay. Now, I love these scissors. These are great for appliques. I got mine at Ken's Sewing. And what you're going to do is you're just going to trim off your excess. The angle of the scissors lets you get down into the hoop and around the fabric without cutting your shirt or your stitches. Okay. Now another thing is you'll see right here I cut it really close, but that's going to be okay because the final stitches are going to be big enough that they'll cover that edge. Okay. Another thing I do is I cut my thread right here and I pull it out this way because it keeps the thread from getting all bunched up in there. We're going to change to white. This little cap goes on here too, but I don't put mine on a lot because my thread gets tangled in it. I don't know if that's a bad thing. I haven't had any problems yet. Okay. And now make sure your thing is, we're ready to go. The stitch that's going right now is just a securing stitch. It's going to hold the fabric down really well. And another thing is, even though the thread color comes up here, sometimes they're not always what you want them to be. And you can change them around. I mean, you can put any color you want. This particular design I'm doing, I chose the same color scheme that the Planet Applique has on their sample, with the yellows and the blues. But I could do it in anything I wanted to. So if I wanted to do it in like red, then I would just, instead of doing white thread, I'd do this in red. Okay, we skipped ahead a little bit through some of that so that I didn't have to sit there and just watch the machine stitch. But now we're going for another tack down stitch for our second layer of fabric. Not tack down, but outline. So we're putting our red thread back in. Okay. And it's ready to go. And I have my pre-prepared peel the back off. I'm just going to lay that in there. I'll try to line it so that I can still use that fabric on something else that may be smaller. So I should have changed the thread color out just now, but I didn't. Now, we're going to cut these little threads out. And and then we put the hoop back on. If you have a Brother 770 like I do, and you have a hard time getting the hoop on, don't worry, it's not you, it's everybody. It just takes some maneuvering, and then the more you do it, the better it gets. Okay. Now, and this is going to be the securing stitch and the final stitch, so this is the color that I wanted for mine. And it's going to take a little while. So on this stitch chart, I just wanted to show you, right here it gives you a breakdown of every needle change and the amount of thread that each one uses. And if you're kind of confused about what's going on, like I said with Planet Applique, she always does the outline stitch in red and the tack down stitch for your fabric in black. And then you can also kind of look at the stitch count and the amount of thread that's being used to get an idea of what is taking place. These outline stitch, the final stitches, these big numbers, 3294, and that's 77 feet of thread, they'll let you know that it's using a lot. So it's something like what's going on right here. So this portion is going to go around each 4 of the buttons and the outline of the piece of fabric that we just put down. So I'm going to turn the video off and we'll pick back up when it's finished.
We'll be right back.
Alright. Now, if you want, you can stop here and try and cut some of these threads. I just try to get the ones that might interfere with the next portion of my design. Okay. we're going to move on to our next stitch. And if you make that mistake, you move over here. I didn't run the thread through the needle, but that's an easy fix. Oh, I'll hit cancel. We want to just go to adjust, and we're going to click the one that looks like the little needle with the plus and minus, and I'm actually going to go back a whole thread, but it's still on 7, 9, my step, so that way it'll start back over right there where I was, and from the very beginning of it. It's complete. Now we're moving on to the wording that's on my design. I'm thinking I'm going to use this pretty color. And you want to make sure that your fabric is pushed way out of the way. Oops. Alright, and it's done. And hit OK. Lift your lever. And remove your hoop. And this is where, don't mind the dog, this is where you take your pins out, and I usually try to cut my stitches while it's still hooped. So, pretty fast. And we're going to move it. Good boy.
Hi, puppy.
We'll move over here. The board, and I'm just going to... I'll just go back and do those. Loosen your screw. Now, nice trim around my stabilizer. I don't take it off. Gives you a little bit of a smoother surface against babies' or kids' skin. But I do cut off all this extra. Trim some of these that are sticking up a little high. down. And except for where I need to trim my stitches here, you're done.
Ta-da!